Welcome back to another edition of TFL's Capital Connection. With us are very familiar faces, Danny Carroll to my far right, Chuck Hurley, who squeezed into the middle. And gentlemen, we have had a lot of good things happen here at the ministry. We're blessed by the supporters and what God is doing through this ministry. But I think today, again, it's the focus on this heartbeat legislation. Our phones are ringing off the hook. Our emails are coming in rapid. What's up with heartbeat? Danny, start us off. What's up with it?
I told somebody yesterday, Bob, the good news is there is no bad news. Sometimes in the legislative process, we measure success by the lack of bad news. Mm-hmm. And even though there was no movement this week on heartbeat, the bill never came up for debate. It's been much a topic of discussion, and we are actually getting signals, in fact some very forthright comments from legislators that they believe it's going to happen before this legislative session adjourns.
Well, when they say this is going to happen, do they mean it's going to pass, or do they mean it's going to come up for a vote, or does it mean both?
Both, but they, as a practical matter, if the House brings it up, the House will pass it. It won't come to the floor unless they are 99% sure they've got the votes.
Well, if it comes up to a vote by their own, doing, they're going to have the votes. But if it's a forced vote, then you just
then it's a little bit different. Yeah.
And you two guys, this is not your first rodeo. Chuck, what's holding it up? I mean, how come we're not there yet? How come we're not celebrating? How come we're not cheering, going, hey, this is the day the Lord has made, and every heartbeat gets to rejoice and be glad in it?
It is odd because in the Senate it was unanimous among Republicans, and in the House it's not. So why are those 8 to 12 to 15 House Republicans so reluctant to say, yes, definitely bring this up, I will definitely vote for it? It's speculation, Bob. I mean, we've had intimate conversations with many of those, let's say 15. Many of those 15, however, don't want to talk to us. So I can only imagine, I can only suspect that with some of them, it's very personal. Maybe there's a family member who's had an abortion. Maybe they've had some involvement with that. And so there may be some shame, there may be some, personal conflict. That's my best guess.
So they may be wrestling with some things in regards to getting to that yes. But I think the good news, what Danny said earlier, the good news is there's no bad news, but there's also good news that I think we're seeing some movement without getting into the weeds, but we're seeing some movement to yes. And our whole thing is get them to yes.
Get them to yes. Here's what I'd like to say to the viewer is you folks are making a difference. I believe that as they hear from hundreds and in fact thousands of Iowans over the last several weeks, it gets harder and harder for a public official to not act. And so you are edging them forward, and we beg you, edge them forward in a very respectful way. The Bible says to honor the king, so whatever you do needs to be honorable. It can be passionate, just not dishonoring.
And I still think one of the best ways to do this is one-on-one. Make that phone call to the legislator that you know. Go out for coffee with that legislator that you know. If you go to church with that legislator that you know, again, in an honorable way, in an affirming way, but in an encouraging way, that makes all the difference in the world. Darla and I attended a pro-life fundraiser last week, Saturday night, and it was for Cradle of Hope out of Mount Pleasant. And the speaker there talked about your legacy. What will your legacy be? What did you do to stand in the gap for the sanctity of human life? And of course, we personalize that. What's our legacy at the family leader? What's Danny? What's Chuck's? What's Bob's? What's each one of our viewers? But I was also thinking about that with the legislators. What an opportunity for a legacy. To stand in the gap and be the vehicle that may overturn Roe v. Wade. What a powerful legacy. That's where you go back to this movie we were just talking about. I can only imagine what that would be like. I can only imagine. You guys have been in the legislature a long time, this session as well. Tuesday is the 100th day of session. Danny, your former Speaker Pro Tem, Why do we care? What does that even mean?
Well, I was going to comment, Bob. The 100th day of the session essentially means that legislators, representatives and senators will no longer get paid their daily per diem. They get two chunks of money. One is a salary of about $25,000 a year, and the other is they get about, I don't know, 100 to 150 bucks a day while they're in session. It's that second one that ends on Tuesday. Plus, their secretaries no longer get paid. That's the end of their contract. So they're without their office staff, which is only one. And it's kind of a mark in time. But in this case, Bob, it does not mean adjournment. They are quite a ways from adjourning. And they've still got some big lifts to make. News recently has been the tax cut bill. The House has not passed theirs yet. They just moved that out of committee yesterday, and it'll probably come to the floor for debate Monday or Tuesday. Once they get that resolved with the Senate, that'll break loose the budget, and it'll take them several days to pass about 10 budget bills. And so the heartbeat bill is kind of competing for energy and attention amongst all of that discussion. And that complicates it somewhat, but it's still a high priority for the Senate because they're on record. They've moved it out. Once they've taken that vote and moved that bill, as they did last month, they don't want to go home empty-handed. And so they're going to be saying to the House of Representatives, give us that bill back. We want to send it to Governor Reynolds for her signature.
Well, when I think about that, and you use the word adjournment, there's a reason why they now want to get out of town. They now want to get out of Des Moines. Heartbeat could play a role in even the adjournment process with some very committed senators and some very committed House members saying, we're not going home till this is dealt with. Chuck, what's the possibility of that?
Well, that's really the best play right now under the Golden Dome, I think, is because there are so many of the truly pro-life legislators that don't want to go home without heartbeat, that in that closed-down negotiation, they could make the difference. I do want to say to you viewers, even if your legislator is for heartbeat, and you don't need to go try to convince them, encourage them, tell them thank you so much, and to stay strong to the end.
And encourage them to encourage their peers who may be waffling. You know, let them be an encouragement up there as well. So as we close this down this week, what do we tell these viewers to do? We want them to do something, right? What do we tell them to do?
You know, Bob, the last year I served was 2006, and for the last couple of years in my term of service, we were just starting to use email. I know that makes it seem like I'm old, but it was a kind of a new thing. And my secretary would go through the dozens, maybe hundreds of emails I would get every day, and I'd say, make sure that I see the ones that are from my district. Because you get tons of emails from everywhere. But I said, make sure that I see the ones. So I would say to a viewer, over these next few days or a couple of weeks till they adjourn, at least drop an email to your state representative or senator, regardless of where they are on the issue.
And governor.
Governor as well, and let them know, and make sure you put your name and the town you're from, so that legislator knows that I'm hearing from a constituent. It is still the most powerful thing that a legislator can hear from, or the person they can hear from is someone from their district. As Chuck said, reassuring those who are in full support and encouraging those who might be ambivalent or even opposed.
And in that email, I'd encourage you to say, don't adjourn until you pass this heartbeat legislation. Make it as personal as you can. I think, Danny, you're right. Make sure it's out of your district, it's your rep, it's your senator. You can go to thefamilyleader.com. We have a very helpful tool up there for you to find out all that information and even facilitate the communication. Use that tool. It's available to you. It's free to you. But make sure that you're communicating. If you know their phone number, pick up the phone and call them. If you know where they do coffee, sit down and have coffee with them. If you go to church with them, make sure you visit with them at church as well. Chuck, what else do we do?
I think the first, middle, and last thing we do is pray.
Amen.
If you look at I think it's Luke 18, Jesus said that a persistent widow kept coming to an unjust judge to get justice. That's what we're asking for here, is justice for the unborn, to protect the innocent. And eventually the unjust judge gave her justice because she was wearing him out. So be as persistent as that widow was in seeking justice. But the main message of Jesus' parable was to pray to a holy God who is just. And he said, if we will cry out day and night, he will give us justice, and speedily. So I would say the number one thing is to pray. And then put feet or phone calls or emails to your prayers. Put action to your prayers.
Well, it's the cornerstone of our ministry, and that is prayer. So we'd encourage you to pray. But I really believe that after you pray, you are compelled to act. Because when you're praying, usually you're prompted, now you need to go do something. And I'd encourage you to do as well. So be in prayer with us. I want to come back next week. I want to be high-fiving. I want to say, this thing is passed. It's to Governor Reynolds' desk. Make sure you don't forget the governor, and be sure to be communicating with her as well. We're excited about this. And this is our opportunity to leave a legacy. I hope you will join us next week at TFL's Capital Connection. Tune in again, hopefully with more and more good news. And in the meantime, go to that website, get a hold of that tool at thefamilyleader.com, and join us in prayer and join us in action, and let's join together in celebration. Thank you so much for being with us this week.